Welcome back to Who Cares Anyway? It's a podcast where I give you my sports opinions, and if you agree with me, who cares? If you don't, who cares? 'Cause at the end of the day, who cares anyway? This week's episode is gonna be a little different. I said a lot, but it's gonna be a little different from past episodes. I want to focus on some sports news headlines that kind of caught my attention over the last week or so. Um, I kind of give my stances on them and where I stand. So that being said, let's get right into it. The first thing on my list on my docket, the Chicago Bulls traded Alex Caruso for Josh Giddey. I don't have the full details of the trade. I can find them though. Probably should have done this beforehand, but here we are. Uh,
A few moments later.
all right. So the full trade details are as follows: the Thunder received Alex Caruso, and the Chicago Bulls received Josh Giddey. That's it. So I just went on a wild goose chase. Um, this trade comes after a disappointing showing from Josh Giddey in the playoffs this year against the Mavs in the second round, and the Thunder sent him to the bench, and rightfully so. I feel both on both ends, both the Thunder sending Josh Giddey to the bench, but also Josh Giddey being upset at the move or not really wanting to be used in a bench role going forward, which is why the trade happened. Josh Giddey was a top 10 pick in his draft class, and he, along with a lot of other people, including myself, feel that he has great upside and that he's has the ability to be an all-star caliber player, if not better. Um, I think this move works out for both sides. And I've seen a lot of people saying, "Oh, this is a terrible trade for the Bulls. You just traded an All NBA player, an All Defensive Team player, um, for somebody that quite literally disappeared in the playoffs." Um, you could look at it like that, but I think for the Thunder, yes, this trade is amazing because they just got an All Defensive Team player to go alongside their All Defensive Team player, right? And it allows them to cover up a lot more of the holes on the defensive end that they have for a team that just got exposed in the playoffs by Luka and Kyrie, um, as well as honestly the Mavs as a whole, the Mavs offense as a whole. But I think this trade also works out for the Bulls because it gives the Bulls, if they do plan on keeping Josh Giddey, it gives the Bulls a player that is an above average playmaker and distributor, but B, it allows them to take some of the pressure off Alonzo Ball, right? And you can kind of allow Lonzo to get the rest he needs, even if he's not, because he may be close to 100%, but there's going to be times during the season where he's going to need to sit down and give his body some rest because he's dealt with so many injuries. Um, I think that Josh Giddey gives the Bulls something that they've been missing for a while, and they still don't really have on their roster, which is a pure playmaker, like a pure point guard. Because as good as Zoe is as a distributor and playmaker, he's still a score first point guard. People say he's a pass first point guard, but I think he's still more of a scorer than he is a passer. The same goes for Kobe White. He's more of a scorer than he is a passer. Josh Giddey gives them a pass first guy that takes the playmaking duties off of Lonzo Ball, off of Kobe White, off of Zach LaVine, and allows those guys to just kind of go out and do what they do best. Um, but even if they do decide to trade him and decide not to keep him on the roster, it gives them the ability, if packaged right, if packaged with the right players or packaged with the right star, it gives them the ability to really go out and get anyone they want. Well, maybe not anyone, but it gives them the ability to leverage Josh Giddey into a player that can really turn around the rebuild in Chicago and really get this rebuild running. Um, and on the off chance they decide to keep him on the team, it opens up the door for Zach Levine to be moved because you can kind of leverage other pieces now. Now you're not like, well, if we move this player, it kind of messes with our lineup. But so now that you have Josh Giddey, you can slot him in where you need to slot him in, and then move Zach Levine and whoever else you need to move in order to get Zach Levine's contract off your books, but also to get a player that does not seem like he's working out. He doesn't. It doesn't seem like his tenure in Chicago has been working out. So I mean, they've been a playing team the last 2 years. Yeah, I believe, or close to it over the last 2 years. And it's just something's got to change. They need some kind of a change happening in Chicago if they want to make the playoffs and make runs in the playoffs. And I don't know whether or not Zach Levine and DeMar DeRozan are the exact answers, or if those should be your cornerstone pieces. I don't know if it's time to move one of them or both of them, or if it was just simply a matter of Lonzo wasn't healthy, and now that he's healthy, we'll see what happens. Um, so we'll see. I know some Chicago Bull fan, I can't talk. Some Chicago Bulls fans are punching air right now because they're like, we just traded one of our best defenders for a guy that completely disappeared last year. Understandable, but I think a change of scenery is going to be good for Josh Giddey. I think him getting away from whatever was happening down in OKC and just kind of readjusting and reevaluating his mental right now and just getting back in the flow of just focusing on basketball might allow him to kind of succeed in the ways that he was before he forgot how to play basketball good or play basketball well. Um, yeah, and that's kind of where I am on that. Not a bad trade for either side on paper. I don't want to say on paper. Not a bad trade for either side. The Bulls have a lot more options on their end. with what to do with Josh Giddey. And the Thunder got a really good defender, and it's going to help them in the long run, especially in playoff runs come when they get back to that spot next year. Sticking with basketball, I want to talk a little bit about the Los Angeles Lakers hiring JJ Redick. Um, this hire is weird to me. I personally, it doesn't seem like a good idea. You went and hired. Sorry, I'm adjusting myself. We're all over the place today. Uh, it doesn't feel like a good idea. You're hiring a guy that has no prior coaching experience at any level, and usually when that happens, it doesn't end well. Um, Look at Steve Nash. It took Jason Kidd 3 stops, I believe, before he got caught his stride with the Mavs. Or well, it took Jason Kidd. This is Jason Kidd's third stop, and it took him until he got to Dallas to really kind of find his stride. Um, don't get me wrong, JJ has a great mind for the game of basketball, and I think he's got this insight that I've never really seen from a player turned coach before. Like, and if you watched any of his podcasts or like his Old Man in the Three or the podcast that he started with LeBron before getting this job, um, and if you listen to him talk about the game and talk about certain things, and even on ESPN as an analyst, if you listen to him talk about the game and talk about certain things, you'll be able to really hear like, yes, he has great insight for the game. He's got a great mind for basketball. I just don't know how well he's gonna do year one or going forward, going past year one. I think it would have been better off for him to start as a assistant, kind of get his feet wet in the coaching sphere, learn the rigors and the ins and outs of being an NBA coach, and then he gets promoted to head coach. But I don't know. I don't know what the Lakers were thinking with this one. Part of me feels like it was just a way for them to be like, we don't want an actual coach. We just have to have somebody that fills that spot. We just have to have a body that fills that spot because we're gonna let LeBron do all the coaching or something like that. I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense because yeah, they went out and tried to get Dan Hurley, and Dan Hurley declined and decided to stay at UConn. Um, and they had the opportunity. Monty Williams got fired like a week before they hired JJ Redick. So Monty Williams was also on the table, and I think the Monty Williams firing from Detroit had a lot more to do with Detroit's situation as a whole and less to do with Monty Williams as a coach. I feel like Monty Williams was not the right coach to be in that situation. I think Monty Williams thrives in situations that are already built up, and he showed in Phoenix that he's a good coach. He took Phoenix to a finals appearance. He had them, I think they were best record in the West. Excuse me. I'm pretty sure they were either best or second best record in the West that year after. So I don't think it had much to do with the fact that Monty is a bad head coach because he's not. I think it just had to do with I don't think any of those Pistons players were really serious about winning basketball games, and that whole situation. I think the Pistons front office has completely derailed Detroit, but that's a conversation for a different time. Um, I don't know. The whole idea that JJ Redick is gonna come in and he's gonna maybe not immediately, but he's gonna come in and lead this team to a championship is I don't see it. I don't see it at all. Um, this is a team in the Lakers that has failed to keep a head coach for longer than 3 years across LeBron's entire tenure. Um, and I don't know what's going on in that front office and why it's been a revolving door at the head coach spot for the Lakers. But every time they hire a head coach, you see why they get fired immediately. Like it very quickly shows why they don't last in LA because they just don't have they have no idea what they're doing in the position. And I think it's gonna happen again with JJ Redick, where yes, he's a smart guy and yes, he has the mind for basketball, but he's not a coach. And it takes time to kind of build up that it takes time to build that skill set. And he's not this is I feel like it's going to be another one of those situations where he's gone in 3 years and we're sitting here talking about and you're hearing a lot of NBA media and social and all over social media like, "Oh, why did they hire him in the first place?" Uh, but the Lakers are going to do what the Lakers are going to do because of the Lakers. It's they're committed to LeBron. I just saw that they're willing to sign him through to a 3-year max deal. And as long as LeBron is in LA, the Lakers are gonna be. They may win games, but the Lakers are gonna be a laughing stock because I feel like that's just what LeBron has brought to this team. Every year since he's been there, it's. I don't think it just hasn't held the same weight, right? Like, I mean, the Lakers were bad before he got there, right? But it's just, I don't know. Every time I hear about the Lakers in the news, it's never the Lakers are doing something great. Like, it's the Lakers are a lot. Like to me, the Lakers are a laughing stock. But that can be a whole video on its own. Um, moving on. The Summer Olympics are coming up. I don't have the exact dates because I don't really watch the Olympics. Probably should because it's just world athletes, like great world athletes competing for their countries, and it's probably dope to watch. Um, but to speak on a little bit about the Summer Olympics, Shakari Richardson just recently um uh, qualified to compete for the Olympics this year, and I shout out to her. This has got to be a huge moment of gratification for her because she's finally getting to compete on a national stage. And like, yeah, she does like world championships and stuff like that. But like, I mean, in the sense of the Olympics, right? I think I think for any, especially like track and field and certain other sports that don't have professional leagues per se, I feel like this is the moment that you wait for your entire life, right? Like for like football, baseball, basketball, hockey, especially in the US, right? You have major sports leagues, major professional sports leagues in the US, and for those sports, you're kind of like, okay, this is the point I'm waiting for. I'm waiting to get to the pros, right? I'm waiting to get to the NHL, the MLB, the NBA, the NFL. I'm waiting to get to that moment, right? Like this is my lifelong dream. But I feel like for a lot of other athletes, like track and field, gymnastics, every other sport that doesn't have a professional scene, especially in the U.S. I feel like the point that they're working towards their entire life is the Olympics, and I think that this has got to be such a great like I said, it's got to be such a great moment for her, especially after what she went through in 2021, not being able to compete because of the THC situation and the drug test and all of that. But I think she's been able to put it behind her and kind of move on and get back with and she's back to where she wanted to be and she's actually able to compete and she's she's able to kind of like she can go out on a stage like the Olympics and prove that she is the best at what she does and has that chance. And I think that, like I said, I think that's just got to be a great moment. That's all I wanted to say about it. Shout out to her. That's all I wanted to say on it. I don't really have much more to say on that. So moving on. For those of you that don't follow baseball, and for those of you that don't know, I am a baseball fan. Let's go Mets. Um, Recently, I believe it was. I don't have the exact date, but it was last week. I think it was like Monday or something like that. I don't know. It was sometime last week. The MLB had I don't want to say put together because it was already put together, but the MLB played the San Francisco Giants and the St. Louis Cardinals. Yes, yeah, the San Francisco Giants and St. Louis Cardinals played in the MLB's first ever Rickwood Stadium game. This was a big occasion for the MLB because this is, a game being played in a stadium that's over 100 years old. It's the oldest baseball stadium in the US, I believe also in the world. This is where a lot of Negro League teams played. And they even did a really good job of paying homage to those Negro League teams and both in honoring past players of of those teams before the game, but also in uh, the uniforms that the teams wore because I don't have the exact team names, but the Giants and the Cardinals wore uh, tribute throwback uniforms to the Negro League teams that played in those cities beforehand. Um, if I can find, I believe it was the St. Louis Grays, and
A few moments later.
I lied. It was the St. Louis Stars and San Francisco Sea Lions, which honestly, I'm gonna be honest with you, if you saw the uniforms, I think that the uniforms really came out well and paid I need to and paid perfect tribute to to um to those teams of the past. Um, that's not what we're here to talk about. I mean, yeah, we're here to talk about the game, but like there's something I'm getting to. Um, during the broadcast, I think ESPN was the only one that broadcasted it. I don't remember. During the broadcast, there was a moment where Alex Rodriguez and they had Reggie Jackson on their panel, a former Negro League player and baseball Hall of Famer, and they had Reggie Jackson on that panel, and Alex Rodriguez asked him a question about what it meant to come back to Rickwood Field and have the MLB put a game on like this. And I'm not gonna paraphrase his answer because I'm not gonna do it justice. So I'm just gonna let I'm gonna let him respond. and I'm gonna play it out for you, and you're gonna hear the complete and full response, no censorship, nothing. And you're gonna hear the weight that comes with this response. So here it is.
Reggie, the baton has been passed for over a century here. We've been talking earlier about if it wasn't for the Willie Mays, the Jackie Robinson, the Reggie Jacksons, the three of us wouldn't have an opportunity to play. How emotional is it for you to come back to a play that you played with one of the greatest teams around?
Alex, when people ask me a question like that, it's like coming back here is not easy. The racism that I played here, when I played here, the difficulty of going through different places where we traveled. Fortunately, I had a manager and I had players on the team that helped me get through it. But I wouldn't wish it on anybody. People said to me today, I spoke, and they said, you think you're a better person? You think you won when you played here in Concord? I said, I would never want to do it again. I walked into restaurants and they would point at me and said, can't eat here. I would go to a hotel and they say, then can't stay here. We went to Charlie Finley's country club for a welcome home dinner, and they pointed me out with the N-word. He can't come in here. Finley marched the whole team out. Finally, they let me in there. He said, we're going to go to the diner and eat hamburgers. We'll go where we're wanted. Fortunately, I had a manager, Johnny McNamara, that if I couldn't eat in the place, nobody would eat. We'd get food to travel. If I couldn't stay in a hotel, they'd drive to the next hotel and find a place where I could stay. Had it not been for Raleigh Fingers, Johnny McNamara, Dave Duncan, Joe and Sharon Rudy, I slept on their couch 3-4 nights a week for about a month and a half. Finally, they were threatened that they would burn our apartment complex down unless I got out. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. The year I came here, Bull Connor was the sheriff the year before. And they took minor league baseball out of here because in 1963, the Klan murdered 4 black girls, children, in 11, 12, 14 years old at a church here and never got indicted. They were from the Klan. Life magazine did a story on them like they were being honored. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. At the same time, had it not been for my white friends, had it not been for a white manager, and Rudy, Fingers, and Duncan, and Lee Myers, I would have never made it. I was too physically violent. I was ready to physically fight I'd have got killed here because I'd have beat someone's ass, and you'd have saw me in an oak tree somewhere.
Reggie, wow. I can't even imagine. It's awful you had to go through that, but appreciate you sharing the rawness and the honesty of it with our audience. I mean, really,
We love you, Reg.
Yeah. Thank you.
Quick history lesson right there.
That's a great history lesson.
You.
Reggie Jackson telling us all about it, preaching. Wow, that's unbelievable. The great Reggie Jackson, the Hall of Famer, joining us here, and we've got more to do.
All right. So, like I said, you really hear the full weight of his response and what this game means to him, right? It's not just a moment of happiness. Yes, I'm sure I'm sure all those former Negro League players are m- more than ecstatic about the fact that the MLB is finally honoring players from that era and showing the younger generation, the historic landmarks and the history of the league that came before, right? But it really is deeper than that. It's about more than just a game. It was especially back then. It was about livelihood. And I mean today it still is. These players are playing a game for their livelihood. They look to this game for their source of income, and that's how they do things. But back then, it wasn't just about money. It was about quite literally trying to stay alive. And listening to that response, it just hit like that whole just the way he responded and him saying him giving specific examples of the prejudice that he had to deal with. Yeah, that's just it's just heavy, and that's why I wanted to let him respond because there's no way that I could do it justice in paraphrasing it or anything like that. Um, One thing I will say, I'm very glad that the production team and the director allowed him to speak his piece and allowed him to do it uncensored for the most part because I feel like if because I feel like that response was important. It was an important testament to the fact that if they didn't keep going, the MLB wouldn't even have reason to do this. If they didn't keep fighting and if they didn't have people behind them that were gonna, uplift them and continue to protect them and be with them every step of the way, then the MLB would have no reason to be in Birmingham, Alabama, playing a game honoring this park. You know, and I think it was a perfect response, and I think it completely recontextualizes both the Rickwood game as a whole, but also being being a black baseball player. I was gonna say black athlete, but I think each league has their own context for being a black athlete. I don't think like black athletes in the NFL not hold the same weight, but have the same context for being a black athlete as black athletes in the MLB do, right? And I think it really his response really recontextualizes being a black athlete in the MLB, being a black baseball player as a whole, you know, because there's not a lot of them. Baseball isn't a sport that young black men gravitate towards. You know, it's usually either basketball or football. And while yes, there are a lot of minority players in baseball with Dominican born players and Cuban born players, and you have Mexican born players. It's a lot of and you even Japanese born players and Korean born players. They're also a minority, and especially in the states. And it's one of those things where you don't see a lot of black representation, which makes the players that do represent that minority, they have a lot more of a weight on their shoulders. They have something more to uphold, right? They're upholding a legacy that was put forth that was built before them over 100 years ago, right? They have to uphold the legacy of Willie Mays and Reggie Jackson and like all of those Negro Jackie Robinson, all of those Negro League players, and even players that were in the ML, like black players that were in the MLB at its infancy, like the Hank Aaron's and so on. And it's just, yeah, I think that response was huge. And I want to say it's on us as fans and really on us as fans to remember not only what those players went through, but to also recognize that the fight doesn't end just because it's not upfront. Like their fight doesn't end just because it's not an upfront fight. You know what I mean? Like it's not just because racism and prejudice just because racism and prejudice isn't upfront and overt anymore, it doesn't mean that's not happening. And and this is really across all sports, right? It's just people have learned to become subtle with it, and I think that we as fans, especially here in the U.S., have got to do a better job of protecting our minority players. And don't get me wrong, like I think all I think the I don't want to say all because I don't know much about the NHL, but I want to say that most of the sports leagues in the US do a great job of protecting their black athletes and their minority athletes. But when especially when you're at a game and alcohol gets involved and emotions get involved and passion gets involved and all you mix all those things and you stir it in a pot and at some point something's going to boil over and something's going to be either said the wrong way or said out of context or said to the wrong person and it's not going to end well. And you really got to like I don't even really have the words, but it's something that's got to be paid attention to and continue to be paid attention to. And just because and we can't just leave it to the leagues, right? You can't just leave it to the pro to the organizations because it's just as much as their job as it's just as much as our it's just as much our job as it is theirs as fans. And I think that there have been way too many instances over the last 10 or so years of minority athletes having something to say about fans that just say the most out of pocket things to them during games, and it's like you can't say that. And I think, and this isn't even just about the racism of it all. It's really just, I think fans have really got to stop thinking they can say anything and everything to these players. Like, let's keep in mind, you paid to come and watch them. Like, it's a privilege for you to be there. They don't have to be there. They get paid to do what they do. You're not getting paid to watch them, so you can't say anything and everything about them. Yeah, yeah, but really, at the end of the day, we are we are watching grown athletes, grown men and women play children's games that we played as children, and at the end of the day, regardless of result, it shouldn't matter what happens. It shouldn't, and it should never escalate to that point. And yeah, like I said, and I say it all the time. I say it every week at the start of every episode. At the end of the day, there's At the end of the day, who cares anyway?